Hey everyone, What If Fan here. I was honestly surprised by the results of the recent poll regarding what if overpowered Ichigo left Karakura town. The majority voted in favor of starting a brand new series instead of continuing the current one. Now, while I personally don't like leaving a story unfinished, especially when we were only a few parts away from wrapping it up, I've always valued the voice of the community. So, as per your feedback, Part 17 will be the final installment of the Ichigo series, at least for now. But with every ending comes a new beginning. Welcome to the first part of What If Transmigrated as a Kanto gym leader. This new series will be taking the place of the Ichigo series moving forward, and I'm really excited to share it with you all. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name down in the description. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Alright, let's dive right in. Chapter 1, Trash Gym. What a waste of time. The sky was bright blue, with a gentle breeze blowing. A few oddish were lounging on the grass, eyes closed, basking in the sunlight. The surface of the small, crystal-clear lake nearby shimmered, with red Magikarp swimming back and forth, occasionally accompanied by Goldeen. By the lake, a slowpoke sat dazedly at the water's edge, its tail submerged, staring blankly into space. It had been sitting there for 3 hours. It wasn't asleep, though, as its eyes were still open. One had to wonder if its eyes ever got dry. But that wasn't the main point. Is that a Pokemon? Did I wake up too suddenly? A black-haired boy sat on a picnic cloth, still a bit dazed as he stared at the slowpoke opposite him. If he remembered correctly, he had been discussing the philosophy of life with a girl cosplaying as a Sudowoodo just moments ago. After some recollection, the boy finally confirmed it. I got struck by lightning, so I really did transmigrate. The boy rubbed his temples, still processing the chaotic information in his mind after 3 hours. This is strange. Is this a soul transmigration or a body transmigration? The boy, Dylan, quickly adapted, his handsome face showing a peculiar expression. Whatever, this is the world of Pokemon. It's like a dream. Dylan lay down, staring at the clear blue sky as his pupils gradually lost focus. He was fond of reading novels, especially transmigration stories that were quite popular. But he never imagined that one day he would transmigrate himself. Most importantly, he had transmigrated into the world of Pokemon. This felt like a fantasy. Same name, same appearance, just a younger body. Dylan couldn't help but touch his face. The boy's skin was indeed good. Before transmigration, he was already 26 years old, but now he was only 18. He had practically rejuvenated, which was quite nice. What puzzled him the most was that his name in this world was still Dylan, and even his appearance was the same. The additional memories in his mind weren't fake either. This was why he was confused about whether he had experienced a body transmigration or a soul transmigration. Forget it, better think about the future. Dylan shook his head. He had always been someone who went with the flow. Since he was here, he might as well settle in. This ancient saying fits him well now. After all, there were no ties in his past life. Then, Dylan organized the current basic information. 1. He was now 18 years old, a Pokemon trainer, and even a gym leader. 2. His parents were traveling the world and had no idea where they were. 3. The gym was currently in decline because the original owner's skills were quite lacking. It was said to be competing with Cerulean Gym for the weakest gym in Kanto. From what I remember, isn't Cerulean Gym currently managed by the three sisters? Dylan's mouth twitched at the thought. According to known memories, the gym industry in Kanto was quite competitive. The weakest gym in Kanto was Cerulean Gym, which had been inherited by the 4 daughters of the previous gym leader after his death. The current gym leaders were the Cerulean sisters. As someone who had watched the anime, Dylan knew how weak those 3 sisters were. You could even challenge and win their badges with a small rattata. It wasn't until Misty returned from her journey with Ash and took over the gym that Cerulean Gym gradually improved. This is a bit of pressure. Dylan couldn't help but frown slightly. In the game, there were only 8 gyms, but in reality, there were more. For example, in the anime, Gary had more than 8 badges. The 8 official gyms were just the most famous ones. The Kanto League encouraged people to establish gyms, but it wasn't easy to meet the criteria. Even if a gym was successfully established, if it didn't perform well, the Pokemon League would send officials to review it. If it failed the review, it would be closed down. Like Officer Jenny, the inspector with the red plane. Dylan's current gym, the Rota Gym, was founded by his father. Now it had been passed down to him, making him the new gym leader. Sprigatito, Oddish, Goldeen, Slowpoke, Spearow. Using these Pokemon to face challengers? What a joke! Dylan recalled the Pokemon he had to use against challengers and his face darkened. Sprigatito was the starter Pokemon he received from Pokemon School. His father was quite strong, so he could establish this gym on a whim. But this didn't mean Dylan was equally capable. Son, your mom and I are going on a honeymoon. This gym is now yours. If you can manage it, great. If not, that's fine too. If you can't hold on, contact me. Your dad will always be your strongest support. That was what his father had said before leaving, supposedly to enjoy the golden coast of Alola. Dylan was speechless. However, this carefree father left him several million as living expenses, showing he had some sense. Low online reputation and poor feedback. Dylan checked the Kanto League's official website. There were few comments under his Rota Gym, and hardly any positive ones. The gym leader is quite handsome and young, but his skills are average. Not recommended for serious challengers. Trash gym, waste of time. This gym and Cerulean Gym are a joke. Even the kid with shorts on the street is better. Poor rating. The league should shut down this kind of gym. Gym leader Dylan is very polite, but he needs to work harder. Reading these comments, Dylan was momentarily speechless. Great, the only positive comments were probably from younger trainers. Dylan then checked the Cerulean Gym. Top-notch gym. Worth visiting. The performance was amazing, eyes full of stars. Seriously disappointing. Is this an official recommended gym? Even a newbie can beat them. Cerulean Gym is declining. It won't last long. The sisters' figures are incredible. How do they maintain them? Their dance performance was excellent. Free badges are free. Not much to ask for, and the performance is nice. Cerulean Gym had many comments, mostly praising the sisters' looks, figures, and dancing skills, but there were plenty of negative ones too. For trainers, challenging gyms was about honing their skills. In this world, traveling in challenging gyms before participating in regional tournaments was common. Most trainers hoped for a worthwhile gym experience to improve themselves. But the 3 sisters managing Cerulean Gym were so weak that it led to increasing negative reviews for this official recommended gym. Chapter 2, Queen Eileen. Fortunately, there's still a fellow traveler to lean on. Dylan flipped through the comments with great interest. Although the gym's situation wasn't great, at least he had a companion in misfortune. No, even though both gyms are struggling, Cerulean Gym's popularity is way ahead of Rota Gym. No, I can't allow myself to be this complacent. Dylan adjusted his thoughts. Since he was already here, he might as well try to save this gym. After all, it's his gym. If it really can't be saved, then so be it. Anyway, he's got money now, so he can do anything he wants. Plus, since he's already crossed into the Pokemon world, he can't miss the opportunity to explore this beautiful world. Yes, there's no problem with this plan. If he can manage, he'll keep going. If not, he'll just go on a journey. Perfect. This backyard is certainly big enough, but there aren't many Pokemon. Dylan glanced at the endless backyard, which belonged to the area behind his gym. The entire area had been purchased and now belonged to him. It was vast and inhabited by a variety of wild Pokemon. Visiting this place to relax and unwind was one of his daily habits. Gym leader, Eileen has come to visit you. A young girl walked over and informed Dylan. All right. Dylan looked at the girl, who was one of the staff members of Rhoda Gym and also the receptionist for Challengers. Dylan stood up and stretched. Not far away, a small green cat that had been crouching on a tree and staring intently at a Pidgey agilely leaped down and dashed over. Meow. The pleasant sound of a meow filled the air as the cat quickly jumped into Dylan's arms and rubbed against him. The small light green body had dark green leaf-like patterns overlapping in the center of its face, with fur on its chest resembling a collar, a very cute little cat. This was none other than Sprigatito, Dylan's starter Pokémon, which he had received at the Pokémon school. Good girl, we'll train this afternoon, okay? Dylan affectionately rubbed Sprigatito's little head, enjoying the soft feel of its fur. Meow. Sprigatito lifted its head, full of determination. Dylan chuckled. So adorable. Entering the gym from the back door, even though the gym's popularity was low, it was still grand and luxurious, clearly a display of wealth. In the guest room, someone was already seated, waiting. Dressed in a luxurious, form-fitting purple-pink gown that accentuated her graceful curves, with golden, voluminous hair cascading like a waterfall, and a delicate, fair face topped with a beautiful crown, this was Eileen, the current queen of Cameron Palace. Eileen, have you been waiting long? Dylan smiled at the woman, who had an air of elegance and nobility. Eileen, the current queen of Cameron Palace, was the woman before him. Yes, Dylan was in Rhoda, the location featured in the movie Lucario and the Mystery of Mew. Of course, although it's called Rhoda, it's actually a rather sizable town. I just arrived. How have you been, Dylan? Eileen rose gracefully, her warm voice carrying concern as her gentle eyes reflected Dylan's image. How else could it be? The gym is really not doing well. Dylan sat down and poured a cup of tea for Eileen, then sighed helplessly. Rhoda is located north of Pewter City in Mtamoon, so it's a relatively remote place. There aren't many travelers who come through here. Eileen spoke up, trying to comfort him. Your Majesty, if I remember correctly, this is the third time you've said that. Dylan replied with a playful tone. Eileen, feeling a bit embarrassed, raised her cup and took a small sip of tea. Although she was the queen of Cameron Palace, she was only 20 years old, and having been raised as a crown princess, she hadn't had much interaction with others. The main issue is my strength. If only I were stronger. Dylan remained optimistic. How could he not be? He had just crossed over to this world, and he had a secure fallback. Worst case scenario, the gym goes under, and he'll just go on a journey. So, it's really not a big deal. You've only just graduated from school. Take your time to get stronger. Your father really was sudden with this. Eileen spoke with a chuckle, her words carrying a hint of sympathy for Dylan. Dylan had only been at the Pokémon school for about 6 months before suddenly being called back to inherit the family business. Having a novice trainer suddenly become a gym leader, it's a bit too much, isn't it? My dad's words were, I've made enough money, it's time to enjoy life. Dylan shrugged. But this gym is still my family's. If it can survive, I'll do my best. Plus, running it well could bring a lot of attention to Rhoda. If only I could help more, Eileen sighed, sounding helpless. But she was just a queen with no combat abilities, certainly not a trainer. Speaking of which, the title of queen may sound grand, but with the Pokémon League's dominance over the world, her role was more like that of a local noble with limited power. Even though the Pokémon League still recognized the legitimacy of these ancient monarchies, the title of queen in this context was more akin to that of a minor local noble. After all, Rhoda was just a town, and the former kingdom of Cameron was never more than a small country. In fact, many people can trace their lineage back to royalty. For instance, Acerola, the future Ghost-type Elite Four member of Alola, is a descendant of Alola's royalty, yet she lives as an ordinary person in modern times. The era of many nations has long since passed. Your Majesty, just cheering for me from the sidelines would give me a lot of motivation, Dylan teased, raising an eyebrow. You're such a smooth talker. Eileen couldn't help but roll her eyes at Dylan. Even though she was 2 years older than him, the two had grown up together and were very close. Your father sent something for you. Eileen then took out a small box and handed it to Dylan. Why does that old man always send stuff to you? Dylan grumbled, but he still eagerly opened the box. I have no idea, Eileen replied, blinking innocently. Pokeballs? Dylan looked at the 2 pokeballs inside the box, noticing they weren't empty, along with a letter. Dear son, I hope this letter finds you well. Your mom and I are having a great time here in Alola, so don't worry about us. I've recently been checking up on our gym's status online. Son, you have to keep pushing forward. Why are there so many bad reviews? If it doesn't work out, just close the gym. Don't let it get to you. Oh, and one more thing. There are a lot of beautiful women here in Alola. Your mom and I plan to stay here a bit longer. I'm seriously considering finding you a stepmother. What do you think? Is that a good idea? By the way, take these 2 Pokemon and train them well. After all, we have the money. One of them is a rare Pokemon I got from the league at a high price, and the other is one I caught here. It's a Mariani, which should be pretty useful. Lastly, your mom and I both like Eileen. Do you like her too? If so, let us know soon. We both want to be grandparents. Or should we keep an eye out for other girls while we travel? Dylan read the letter with a blank expression and then put it away. This old man is truly hopeless. Chapter 3, 2 Pokemon. What did your father say? Seeing Dylan's expression, Eileen couldn't help but be curious. Nothing much, just that he's still the same old joker. Dylan calmly folded the letter back into the envelope, making a light-hearted complaint about his father. Who talks about their dad like that? And what does joker mean? Eileen laughed softly, covering her mouth. Just take it as a compliment, Dylan replied after a moment's thought. He prepared these 2 Pokemon for me. I wonder what they are, let's take a look. Dylan then curiously picked up the 2 Pokeballs. Sure. Eileen was also very interested. The 2 of them went to the backyard, and Dylan tossed out the 2 Pokeballs. 2 beams of white light flashed, and 2 Pokemon appeared in front of them. The Pokemon on the left had a rather peculiar appearance, with 10 tentacles hanging down like hair, covering its body. However, the tentacles in the front were short, allowing them to see its purple body. It was a Mariani. The one on the right also had a strange appearance, resembling a shell-less snail with a pale purple body, green spots on its cheeks, and 2 antennae on its head. Dylan was a bit surprised because this was a Gumi. Its final evolution is one of the pseudo-legendaries, Gudra or Hisuian Gudra. Gudra, a pseudo-legendary. Of course, pseudo-legendary is just a common term among players. Officially, Pokemon like Gudra and Dragonite are referred to as late bloomers. Deep Gumi, Dragon-type, soft tissue Pokemon. Ability, Sap Sipper. Moves, Dragon Breath, Water Gun, Absorb, Tackle, Counter, Egg Move. Description, the weakest Dragon-type Pokemon. If its skin dries out, it won't be able to breathe, so it always stays in shady places. Deep Mariani, Poison/Water-type, brutal star Pokemon. Ability, Merciless. Moves, Recover, Venoshock, Bite, Wide Guard, Poison Sting, Peck, Haze, Egg Move. Description, it stabs its prey with its poison spike and then grabs it with its 10 tentacles when it's weakened, delivering a fatal blow. Eileen took out her Pokédex and checked the information of the 2 Pokemon. Although she wasn't a trainer, she had still purchased a Pokédex as a useful tool. At that moment, Gumi curiously looked around, while Mariani remained quiet and seemed a bit shy. Sprigatito took a few steps forward, its eyes full of curiosity as it looked at its new companions. They're both excellent. Dylan also finished checking the information on the 2 Pokemon. Well, it made sense, his father wouldn't have given him any subpar Pokemon. Hello there, from today on, I'll be your trainer. Let's work well together. Dylan squatted down, speaking gently as he offered a Dragon-type and a Poison-type Pokeblock to the Pokemon. A mysterious wave of energy also emanated from him. Goo. Gumi, clearly the more outgoing of the 2, took a small bite of the Dragon-type Pokeblock, and its eyes lit up. It then happily called out to Dylan, its eyes squinting with joy. Mariani, on the other hand, remained quiet and shy, but it didn't reject Dylan's poke block. Poke blocks are nutritious treats made from berries that not only serve as food but are also delicious, making them a popular choice for Pokemon. I'm glad you like it. Dylan's smile remained warm and comforting, making the two Pokemon feel very close to him. The mysterious energy continued to flow. Yes, this was his special ability, the power of Viridian. The power of Viridian is a natural force, a blessing from the Viridian Forest. Children born in the Viridian Forest have a chance to receive its blessing. Those with the power of Viridian are naturally close to Pokemon, possessing the ability to heal them, communicate with them, and possibly even other special abilities. Thanks to the power of Viridian, the Pokeblocks, and Dylan's gentle demeanor, Gumi and Mariani quickly warmed up to him. No matter how many times I see it, Dylan, your ability to easily gain the trust and friendship of Pokemon is truly amazing, Eileen quietly marveled as she watched the two Pokemon devour the Pokeblocks. That's why I love Pokemon and want to become a trainer. This is a gift from nature, Dylan replied with a gentle smile, his eyes reflecting a soft glow. The power of Viridian, an ability only found in the Pokemon Adventures manga, doesn't exist in the anime or games. So, is this world not just the anime world? Compared to the anime and games, the Pokemon world in Adventures is far more dangerous. But the current champion of Kanto is Lance, so that must be right. However, in Adventures, Lance is a major villain. So, there are some differences. Speaking of which, Dylan glanced at Sprigatito, then at Gumi and Mariani, finally fixing his gaze on Mariani. From what he knew, Mariani's growth rate was clearly higher than that of Sprigatito and Goo. My! What's on your mind, Dylan? Eileen asked, noticing the thoughtful look on his face. Nothing, just thought of something. Eileen, do you know how to make a gym famous quickly? Ha! Uniqueness. For a gym to be well known, it needs to have a unique feature, Dylan said with a snap of his fingers, his eyes brightening. Like what? Eileen still didn't quite get it. It could be a signature terrain feature, a distinctive battle style, or even a specific typing theme. Dylan explained further. For example, the current Cerulean Gym. Although it benefits from its history as a former official gym, what keeps its fame alive now is the underwater dance performances by the Cerulean sisters who currently run it. Even though their battle skills are terrible, they put on a good show, which makes it a unique feature. Dylan had a good idea of the path he could take early on. His Pokemon weren't very strong yet, so attracting challengers with difficulty was out of the question. Eileen was amazed, even if she didn't fully understand. Mariani, come here. I have something interesting to show you. Mariani, having finished its Pokeblock, tilted its head in confusion as Dylan approached. Why does this trainer's smile seem a bit suspicious? Dylan then began taking out one TM after another. TMs are tools that allow Pokemon to quickly learn new moves. Normally, Pokemon learn moves through their own experiences, special training, or by observing other Pokemon. There's no real need to buy TMs. But Dylan's family was wealthy, so his father had bought a lot of them because it was convenient. After teaching Mariani more than 10 moves in one go, Dylan had a satisfied smile on his face. Now, all that was left was a few days of training, and he would be ready for challengers. Chapter 4, I want to be a role model as a gym leader. Mount Moon. This is a well-known mountain in the Kanto region. Because the surface of Mount Moon is difficult to traverse, most travelers pass through its caves instead. Mount Moon is famous not only for its wild Clefairy but also for the frequent meteorite showers. The meteorites that fall here turn into moonstones, and there's also the chance to excavate fossils. With rare Pokemon like Clefairy residing here, along with valuable moonstones and fossils, it's no wonder Mount Moon is so famous. At this moment, Dylan had arrived at the foot of Mount Moon. Yes, he had stayed in Rota for 2 or 3 days, dedicating himself to training his 3 main Pokemon, including Sprigatito, to prepare for potential challengers. Improving the reputation of a gym requires more than just a few battles, but Dylan was full of determination. However, the problem was He had waited 3 days, yet not a single challenger had shown up. All his enthusiasm seemed to have been for nothing. Dylan was silent about this, but considering that Rota is a relatively remote area, it's not surprising that few people would come all the way there to challenge the gym. Moreover, Rota Gym wasn't particularly well known, and many travelers who visited Rota might not even know there was a gym there. It wasn't a big deal, he would just use this time to train even harder and aim to evolve Sprigatito and his other Pokemon as soon as possible. Additionally, to be fully prepared for challengers, he needed to build a stronger team. The Pokemon available at the gym were too few to handle serious challengers. So, Dylan headed to the area around Mount Moon. Since Rota is situated near Pewter City and Mount Moon, the distance wasn't far. Sprigatito, use Bite. Dylan, carrying a space bag on his back, ordered the eager Sprigatito in front of him. Meow. Sprigatito let out a spirited cry, swiftly charging toward a purple Ekans in front of it. The Ekans, a poison type, already had several injuries from its battle with Sprigatito. The Ekans coiled its purple body and displayed 2 dark purple fangs, lunging at Sprigatito with Poison Fang. Dodge it. Sprigatito nimbly sidestepped, avoiding the Poison Fang with natural agility. Use Bite. Sprigatito turned around and sank its dark glowing fangs into Ekan's tail. It was a dark-type move, Bite. Ekans hissed in pain, turning to glare at Sprigatito before lunging again. But Sprigatito was too quick, retreating with a leap and dodging the counterattack effortlessly. Scratch! Sprigatito raised its right paw, the sharp white glow of its claws slashing at Ekan's head. It was a normal-type move, Scratch. The attack hit perfectly. Ekan's body went limp, and it collapsed on the ground with swirly eyes, indicating it had fainted. Pokeball, go. Dylan expertly threw an Ultra Ball. The Ultra Ball hit Ekans, turning its body into red light as it was absorbed into the ball. Wiggle. Wiggle. Click. The Ultra Ball wobbled twice before making a crisp sound. The ball clicked shut, indicating Ekans had been successfully caught. Well done. Dylan stepped forward to pick up Ekan's Pokeball, praising Sprigatito, who looked up at him with a face that seemed to say, "Come on, praise me." Meow. Hearing its trainer's praise, Sprigatito's tail wagged happily, and it gracefully jumped onto Dylan's shoulder, letting out a proud meow. Its tone seemed to imply, of course. Don't get too cocky, we still have a lot of training ahead. Dylan chuckled as he scratched the little cat's chin. Meow meow, Sprigatito purred contentedly, though whether it was listening or not was anyone's guess. Behind Dylan, Eileen, dressed in casual attire, covered her mouth and laughed softly. Come on out. Dylan then released the newly captured Ekans. With a flash of white light, the weakened Ekans appeared in front of him. Although it had regained consciousness, its injuries hadn't healed, and it still looked listless. Dylan took out a potion spray, crouched down, and sprayed it on Ekans. From now on, I'm your trainer. Let's work together. Dylan said warmly, treating Ekans with a gentle smile. In fact, his Viridian power could also heal Pokemon. However, using the Viridian power consumed mental energy, and since he had already bought the potions, why waste them? Hiss. Ekans flicked its tongue, its slit pupils staring at Dylan before nodding in acknowledgement. Generally, unless a wild Pokemon has an extremely unusual or solitary nature, it will usually accept its new trainer after being captured. This seems to be an instinctive behavior ingrained deep within them. Beep Ekans, Poison-type, Snake Pokemon. Ability, Intimidate. Moves, Wrap, Leer, Poison Sting, Bite, Glare, Poison Fang, Screech, Sucker Punch, Inherited. Eileen pulled out her Pokédex to check Ekans' information. It inherited Sucker Punch? And did it learn Poison Fang from another Pokemon? Dylan was surprised after hearing the Pokédex's description, glancing at the now much more energetic Ekans in front of him. Sucker Punch must have been inherited, no doubt about it. Initially, Dylan thought that Poison Fang was the inherited move. But now, it seems that it learned it from another wild Pokemon. Looks like my luck is pretty good. This Ekans has great potential. Dylan gently patted the top of Eakin's head, feeling its cool, smooth texture. Eakins tilted its head, staring at its trainer with its snake eyes, though it was unclear what it was thinking. That's great to hear. Dylan, it's getting late. Are we heading back today? Eileen was happy for Dylan, seeing that he was in a good mood. For some reason, seeing Dylan working so hard for the gym made her feel very happy as well. Perhaps it was because if the gym didn't close, Dylan would stay in Rhoda? Let's head back. We've had a productive day. Dylan returned Eakins to its pokeball, glanced at the setting sun, and stretched lazily. Ah, that felt good. The two of them started walking back toward Rhoda. It seems like you've captured a lot of poison-type Pokemon. Are you planning to specialize in poison types? Yeah, that's the plan for now. Dylan nodded. He had indeed captured several poison-type Pokemon today. Aside from Eakins, there were also Oddish, Nidoran, Venonat, Zubat, and even a Nidorino, all poison types. But poison type, isn't that kind of niche? Eileen carefully chose her words, cautiously bringing it up with Dylan. Besides, Dylan's appearance is rather handsome, with a sunny disposition. Specializing in poison types doesn't really suit him. Poison-type Pokemon are not very popular among trainers. Most people don't like poison types. It's true that there aren't many poison-type trainers, but that's exactly why I chose it. Dylan chuckled. Gym facilities are meant to challenge and train those who come to face them. For those challengers, besides earning a badge to qualify for the regional league tournament, it's also about improving their skills and strength. Eileen seemed to ponder this. And as a gym leader, specializing in poison types temporarily helps those who challenge the gym gain experience in dealing with poison types. It's for their own good. Dylan said righteously. His goal was to become a model gym leader for everyone. But he wouldn't mention that battles with poison-type Pokemon tend to leave a lasting impression. That's the real reason he's choosing to focus on poison types for now. No wonder you're amazing, Dylan. Eileen's eyes sparkled, but then she seemed to remember something. But I recall that there's already a gym in Kanto specializing in poison types. Isn't that Fuchsia Gym? It's fine, fair competition. I'll do my best to make everyone forget about that so-called Fuchsia Gym. Dylan's tone was humble. Eileen. As they walked, Dylan continued to ponder his team composition. There are quite a few poison-type Pokemon in Kanto, but their strength and team synergy are average. Speaking of which, if I'm going to use a poison-type team for now, I have to consider how to handle poison and steel types. Father happens to be an Alola, so I'll have him get me some Salandit and Salazzle with the corrosion ability. And I should also ask him if he has any connections in Paldea. If he could get me some Glimmera, that would be even better. Dylan contemplated. If he wanted to build a poison-type team, having a few Glimmera would be ideal. With its toxic debris ability, Glimmera is perfect as a lead Pokemon. Plus, a Glimmera with corrosion can deal with poison and steel-type Pokemon, which normally can't be poisoned. I should ask my father, Dylan thought. He didn't have time to visit Paldea or Alola right now, but father had connections and could probably get them. Chapter 5, finally, a challenger. Greetings, my dear father. How have you been recently? I hope you haven't lost yourself amidst the white sandy beaches of Sunshine Coast. Recently, your handsome and wise son has come up with a new plan to revitalize the gym industry and urgently needs your support. After saying goodbye to Eileen and returning to the gym, Dylan took a shower and then lay on his bed, pulling out his phone to send a message to his old man. As for why he didn't send a letter like his old man? Come on, what era is this? Sending letters nowadays? Only his old man is so fond of correspondence. He calls it the romance of the times, though Dylan can't quite understand it. After sending his request to his dear father, Dylan stared at his phone in deep thought. Speaking of which, as the wheels of time roll forward, technology continues to develop. Dylan quickly searched online. So Professor Kukui from the Alola region proposed the concept of the Rotom Dex? So the Rotom Dex hasn't been created yet, which means the Rotom phone hasn't been made either. Dylan confirmed this. The so-called Rotom Dex and Rotom Phone are basically like AI-based Pokédexes and smartphones. In the original work, Rotom entered the Dex and Phone to act as the AI in the 7th generation Alola region and 8th generation Galar region, respectively. This could be a huge money-making opportunity. In Scarlet/Violet, Nimona Sr. is the daughter of the Rotom Phone Company's owner, making Nimona a super-rich 2nd generation heir. Dylan informed his father of this. He doesn't have time to start a company, but his father certainly can. If they seize this opportunity, it wouldn't be hard to rank among the world's top companies. After waiting a while, Dylan's father replied with an OK message, so Dylan decided to get some rest. The night passed without incident. The next morning, Dylan got up, washed up, and went out for breakfast before beginning to train his Pokémon. I still need to raise more Pokémon, this yard still feels lifeless. In the backyard, Dylan watched Sprigatito and Marini undergo special training battles, glancing at the seemingly endless backyard with a silent thought. Leaving the yard so empty is a waste of resources. It would be a shame not to raise more Pokémon here. Moreover, as a gym leader, it's essential to have a variety of Pokémon on hand. In the future, when he becomes stronger, he can't use his main team to deal with rookie trainers who come to challenge, right? That would crush their little dreams. Gym leader. The receptionist came running over excitedly, her short skirt fluttering as she did. What's up? Dylan looked at the receptionist in confusion. We have a challenger. Someone's here to challenge the gym. The receptionist was thrilled, her face flushed with excitement. Obviously, she was overjoyed that someone had finally come to challenge the gym. After all, it had been nearly a week. What gym goes a week without a single challenger? The receptionist genuinely hoped the Rota gym could prosper. She was still young, but she knew this gym leader was a good person who took care of her. Oh! Dylan's eyes lit up. Finally, a challenger. Dylan immediately called back his Pokémon from training and headed inside the gym. At this moment, inside the Rota gym. Tisk, this gym is pretty big, looks decent. The handsome, spiky-haired boy surveyed the gym, nodding in satisfaction. Although he knew from online research that this gym wasn't top tier, it didn't matter. He was just here to grab a badge. Whether the challenge was tough or not didn't matter, he was determined to get that badge. Still, I hope the gym leader puts up a bit of a fight, otherwise, this would be too boring. The spiky-haired boy smirked to himself, clearly someone who enjoyed showing off. Ah! Gary is so handsome. Gary is as confident as ever today. Gary, you have to win this gym battle too. Behind the spiky-haired boy, several young girls gazed at him with hearts in their eyes, staring at him adoringly. Don't worry, my darlings, no problem at all. After I win this badge, we can go shopping. Gary turned around, stylishly brushed his bangs, and blew a kiss to his girlfriends, promising that he would win the gym badge. After all, it was just the small Rota gym. He was going to win. Gary's response sent the cheerleaders into a frenzy of excited screams. So, the challenger is this guy? Dylan, who had just entered the gym from the back door, witnessed this flashy display and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. The receptionist also had a complicated expression. Though the situation felt a bit strange, Dylan still walked towards Gary. After all, this was the long-awaited challenger. Even if the challenger was a bit eccentric, Dylan had to face him head-on. Is it you? The Rota gym trainer. Gary also noticed the approaching black-haired boy, raising an eyebrow as his gaze grew serious. Damn! This gym leader is so handsome. He might even be better looking than me. He could actually be a match for me. This is a strong opponent. Hello, I'm Dylan, the Rota gym leader. Dylan smiled warmly, his tone calm and soothing. His polite demeanor made the girls behind Gary's eyes sparkle with admiration. This gym leader seemed to be the warm and sunny type. I am Gary Oak from Pallet Town. Despite being proud and arrogant, newly debuted Gary still maintained basic manners, except when facing his childhood friend. I heard there's a gym in this town, so I came to try it out, even if it's just a no-name gym. But inevitably, after a moment of courtesy, Gary quickly returned to his domineering stance. The Rota Gym welcomes any challenger. Shall we begin now? Dylan kept his warm smile, unfazed by Gary's tone. Of course. Gary was confident. Besides the pride of being Professor Oak's grandson, Gary's talent, though not as monstrous as his twin brothers, still marked him as a genius trainer in the eyes of many. And considering the information he found before coming here, it was laughable Rota Gym was named alongside Cerulean Gym as one of the weakest in Kanto. Pressure? None at all, he already had 3 gym badges. Victory was guaranteed. Dylan and Gary took their places on the battlefield, and the gym referee, finally with something to do, walked over. We are now commencing the gym battle for the Rota badge. The challenger is Gary from Pallet Town. The battle will be a 2v2, with gym leader Dylan sending out his Pokemon first. The match ends when one side's 2 Pokemon are unable to battle. Begin! The referee waved the small flag and then stepped back from the battlefield. On the big screen at the front of the gym, half-body images of Dylan and Gary appeared on opposite sides. Dylan took out a Pokeball, spinning it on his finger as a slight smile appeared on his lips. Allow me to introduce myself formally. I'm Dylan, the Rota Gym leader. I am a multi-type trainer who selects the type of my team based on the challenger's strengths. Dylan remained as courteous as ever. Gary, may I ask you a question? Gary looked at Dylan, puzzled. Have you ever faced the power of poison? That omnipresent force that constantly corrodes you. Sometimes, it's not just brute strength that determines victory. Take your time to savor it. The smile on Dylan's face deepened, to the point where Gary felt a strange, almost twisted sense of unease. What is he talking about? Gary knew many gym leaders like to talk a bit of trash before a battle, but this guy's words sounded so classy. Well, then, let's begin our battle. Dylan's smile returned to normal, as if nothing had happened, and he casually tossed the Pokeball in his hand. Gary, your first opponent will be this one. The first gym battle to turn things around. It starts now. Chapter 6, Poison. Go, Mariani, get ready for battle. Dylan swiftly tossed the Pokeball in his hand, and with a flash of white light, Mariani, with its tentacle-like hair, landed in front of Dylan, looking adorably at Gary. What kind of Pokemon is this? I don't recognize it, I've never seen it before. It looks quite abstract. Go, Gary. You can do it. The cheerleaders, now seated in the audience, whispered among themselves. Mariani, a Pokemon from the Alola region, was rarely seen in other areas, so it was no surprise they didn't recognize it. This isn't a Pokemon from the Kanto region. Gary's handsome face showed a thoughtful expression as he recalled his knowledge, realizing he had no memory of Mariani, and spoke up. He was confident in his memory. This is Mariani from the Alola region, a water/poison type. My father is currently traveling there. Dylan smiled as he briefly introduced Mariani's type, seeing no need to hide it. After all, the use of a Pokédex during battles isn't prohibited. Though the device locks certain moves from view, basic information can still be accessed. This is quite interesting. Gary became slightly more interested in unfamiliar Pokemon, after all. In that case, I'll go with this one. Gary took out a Pokeball, bringing it to his lips for a gentle kiss. His blissful expression made the receptionist shiver slightly. What kind of weird move was that? Or could it be that doing so imparts some mysterious power to the Pokemon inside the Pokeball? Go! My beloved baby! Gary stylishly threw the Pokeball. With a flash of white light, a blue turtle-like Pokemon landed in front of Gary. Its body was indigo, with a pair of fluffy, wing-like ears on its oval head, and its tail was similarly fluffy. It was none other than Wartortle, the evolved form of Squirtle. Deep Wartortle, Water-type, Turtle Pokemon. Ability, Torrent. Moves, Rain Dance, Protect, Water Pulse, Bite, Rapid Spin, Withdraw, Water Gun, Tackle, Aqua Ring, Egg Move. Description: often lurking underwater to ambush prey, it uses its ears for balance when swimming at high speeds. Looks pretty strong, huh? The receptionist blinked as she read the information about Wartortle on her Pokédex. Although this boy's behavior was full of flair, considering he seemed to be around 16, he was likely a rookie trainer. Wartortle, huh? Dylan raised an eyebrow. If it's Wartortle, then the strategy he had in mind wouldn't work since Wartortle is sure to use that move. What a shame. But it's not a big deal. You may have the first move, Challenger. Dylan showed gentlemanly courtesy, motioning toward Gary. Then I won't hold back. Gary tilted his chin up. Wartortle, close in and use bite. Gary decisively ordered Wartortle, reflecting his arrogant and overconfident nature. His battle style mirrored his personality, he liked to keep control in his hands. Use pin missile to stop it. Dylan chuckled lightly. After a few days of training, Mariani had learned a new move, pin missile, which was quite handy. Mariani let out a soft cry, raised its tentacles, which glowed white, and fired beams of pin missiles at Wartortle. Wartortle, use rapid spin. Gary reacted quickly. Wartortle retracted its limbs into its shell, which then spun rapidly. Using the speed and momentum of the spin, Wartortle actually flew toward Mariani. As expected, it knows that move. Dylan wasn't surprised, as rapid spin is a move that Wartortle naturally learns as it grows. Is that even possible? The receptionist was stunned. The pin missile struck, continuously hitting the spinning Wartortle, but its rapid spin, combined with its hard shell, deflected the pin missiles, allowing Wartortle to close in on Mariani. Haha, my Wartortle has been carefully trained by me. Gary was in a great mood, confidently flicking his bangs. Did they really think a mere pin missile could stop his beloved Wartortle? Meanwhile, in the audience, the cheerleaders were already dancing in unison. Amazing! Amazing! Go, Gary! The beautiful cheerleaders lined up, cheering loudly for Gary. Ugh! What are these girls trying to do? The receptionist was annoyed. So what if it blocked a pin missile? Someone who didn't know better might think that the conceited challenger had already won. Dylan, you have to win. The receptionist refocused on the battle, silently cheering for her gym leader. However, her shyness kept her from shouting like the cheerleaders. Having broken through the pin missile, the rapidly spinning Wartortle was now closing in on Mariani. Bang! Rapid spin struck Mariani, causing it to let out a muffled groan as it was knocked back slightly. Wartortle, use bite. Gary's battle instincts were indeed sharp, as he immediately had Wartortle pursue the attack. Wartortle, upon landing, quickly lunged at Mariani, its mouth open as dark energy fangs formed, biting down on the tentacle at the front of Mariani's head. A dark-type bite. Mariani cried out in pain. The direct hit from bite was indeed quite painful. Now, use water gun. Gary's grin widened, feeling confident in his advantage. Although using water gun against another water type like Mariani was not very effective, he had no choice, as most of Wartortle's current moves were water type. It's true that Professor Oak was his grandfather, but Professor Oak wanted them to grow on their own rather than rely on his resources. And given Gary's naturally proud and strong-willed personality, he indeed wanted to prove himself through his own abilities. As a result, Gary hadn't asked Professor Oak for a move tutor, despite how convenient it would have been. Wartortle released Mariani, puffing out its cheeks as it prepared to unleash a close-range water gun. Mariani, Dylan's lips curled into a slight smile as he called out. Mariani heard Dylan's voice, and thanks to the bond they developed over the past few days, it immediately understood what Dylan had in mind. Raising its tentacles, a deep purple, eerie poison gleamed as it jabbed directly into Wartortle. The poison seeped into Wartortle's body, and because Wartortle's body blocked the view, Gary didn't even notice it. Bang! The water gun blasted directly into Mariani's face, causing it to cry out in pain as it was pushed back by the force of the attack. Mariani had resistance to water gun, so the damage it took wasn't significant, but the impact was real. So much for that. In his favorable position, Gary smugly tilted his chin up. The online rumors were right, this gym wasn't much of a challenge. But then again, it made sense. After all, he was Gary. However, just then, Wartortle suddenly doubled over in pain, its entire body flashing with a strange, eerie purple glow as patches of poison appeared all over it. Wartortle. Gary's expression changed as he stared in shock at his Wartortle, now suffering from its first bout of poisoning. Is this poison? And judging by the appearance of the poison spots, it wasn't just any poison, it was toxic poison. Toxic. Inflicts the target with toxic status. While under toxic status, the target loses HP each turn, with the damage increasing as time passes. But when did Wartortle get hit with toxic? How did he not notice? The opponent didn't even give that command, damn it. What the heck, is there a sneaky one here? Gary's face darkened as he replayed the battle details in his mind, quickly pinpointing the moment. It must have been when Wartortle used Bite on Mariani. That was the only opportunity Mariani had to use toxic. Gary lifted his head to look at Dylan, who was still smiling innocently. You guessed it right. But I didn't expect you to approach Mariani so carelessly. It was easy to land that toxic. Dylan smiled as he spoke. Originally, he had planned to bait Gary into a few more traps, but Gary's vigilance was far lower than he had anticipated. Even after successfully landing toxic, Gary hadn't realized it. Dylan's response made Gary's face even more grim, his expression growing darker and more uncertain. He wasn't stupid. Once Wartortle was hit with the nasty toxic move, it was like racing against death itself. Either Wartortle would be taken down by the poison, or it would have to defeat Mariani before succumbing to it. It doesn't matter. All I need to do is defeat Mariani first. Gary reassured himself, thinking that mere toxic wouldn't be enough to turn the tide in Mariani's favor. Surely, Mariani was destined to lose, right? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Besides, Wartortle had already dealt 3 hits to Mariani. As long as it continued to press the attack, Mariani was bound to go down first. But then... Mariani, use recover, Dylan said with a gentle smile. Gary? Chapter 7, this guy is so disgusting. Recover. Mariani chirped softly as a gentle white light began to envelop its body. The normal type move recover can restore a significant amount of the user's stamina. Gary couldn't hold back any longer, glaring at Dylan. This guy was really outrageous. First, he poisoned Wartortle, and now he's using recover? Who taught him to battle like this? Mr. Gary, is something wrong? Dylan feigned surprise as he looked at Gary. Gary's face darkened, and he remained silent. As much as he felt disgusted, Dylan hadn't broken any battle rules. Both toxic and recover were legitimate moves, and there was no rule against using them. But it still grossed him out. Recover restored a large amount of stamina, which meant that Wartortle had to defeat Mariani in a short time. Otherwise, Wartortle did have the Aqua Ring move to gradually recover, but the poison from toxic became more severe with each passing moment. The longer the battle dragged on, the more dangerous it became. In the later stages, a single hit from the poison could severely injure Wartortle, or even knock it out at full health. But what should he do now? Gary's face grew darker and darker. Even with his usually proud intellect, he couldn't think of a way out of this situation. The atmosphere suddenly became eerily quiet. The previously lively cheerleaders in the audience also fell silent, each one more quiet than the last. They weren't completely clueless about battles, and they could tell that Gary was in a bad mood. Mr. Gary, aren't you going to command Wartortle? The first round of toxic has already passed. Dylan kindly reminded Gary, his tone still gentle. Look at you, sweating all over. Gary gritted his teeth. This guy. Wartortle, use Bite. Switch out Wartortle. No way. Gary refused to believe that his beloved Wartortle could lose to this ugly Mariani. Wartortle, re-energized, lunged at Mariani, who had just finished using recover. So many openings. Seeing Wartortle charging in, Dylan chuckled softly. Venoshock. Mariani raised its two tentacles, and a sinister purple glow appeared. Wait. Wartortle. Gary's expression changed drastically. Venoshock was a poison-type move that normally wasn't too powerful. However, if the opponent was poisoned, the move's power doubled. A massive amount of dark purple venom shot out like a water cannon. When Wartortle heard Gary's voice, it tried to halt its charge. But Venoshock came too quickly, there was no time to dodge. Boom! The Venoshock struck Wartortle directly, covering it in thick, sticky poison. Wartortle cried out in pain as it was thrown to the ground. The venom slowly dripped from Wartortle's body, remnants of the Venoshock attack. The doubled power of Venoshock dealt significant damage to Wartortle. Gary ground his teeth. The situation was now completely against him. A poisoned Wartortle was no match for Mariani. No matter how unwilling he was, there was no changing this outcome. Another Venoshock. Dylan calmly ordered. Mariani raised its tentacles again, and that eerie dark purple energy reappeared. Wartortle, dodge and use Aqua Ring. Gary tried to make one last effort. Challenger, you're a bit naive. Question mark. Gary didn't understand. Dylan shook his head. The newly debuted Gary was not only arrogant but also immature, far less composed than the more experienced Gary in the future. Venoshock surged toward Wartortle. Normally, Mariani's straightforward attack would be easy for Wartortle to dodge. But the situation was far from normal now. As soon as Wartortle tried to move, its body suddenly flashed with a dark purple light. The poison marks appeared all over its body again. The second wave of toxic had arrived. Wartortle. Gary's expression changed drastically. Due to the sudden surge of poison, Wartortle's movements froze, and it winced in pain as the poison wreaked havoc inside its body. Boom! Venoshock hit Wartortle squarely. The pain from both inside and outside overwhelmed Wartortle, and it was sent flying by the powerful attack, crashing hard onto the ground. The terrifying poisonous light continued to flicker on Wartortle's body. When the second wave of poison finally subsided, Wartortle had already fainted. Wartortle is unable to battle. Mariani wins. The referee stepped forward, examined Wartortle, and then raised the small flag. Yay! The receptionist girl jumped up excitedly. The gym leader won. This was the first time since she started working here that she saw the gym leader defeat a challenger's Pokémon, or at least one Pokémon. In stark contrast to the receptionist's excitement, the cheerleaders in the audience looked deflated, like wilted eggplants. Gary, his face grim, recalled Wartortle. He actually lost. Looks like I underestimated you. But I'm going to get serious now. Gary took a deep breath to steady his emotions, then spoke seriously to Dylan. I'm looking forward to it, Dylan replied with a smile, making a gesture for Gary to send out his next Pokémon. I have to watch out for that toxic. Damn it, I didn't bring any poison-type Pokémon with me. Water, poison. Gary thought for a moment, then took out another Pokeball. He brought it to his lips and gently kissed it. He then seemed to think that wasn't enough, so he kissed it again. Seeing this, Dylan's mouth twitched slightly. This guy was too much. Go! Gary threw the Pokeball with a serious expression. I have to win. A flash of white light revealed a Pokémon wearing a skull helmet standing before Gary. It stood on two legs, gripping a bone club in its right hand, with a white skull mask on its head. It was Cubone. Beep Cubone, Ground-type, Lonely Pokémon. Ability, Rockhead moves. Bonemerang, Stomp, Toss, Revenge, Headbutt, Tail Whip, False Swipe, Double Edge, Egg move. Description: it wears the skull of its deceased mother on its head. Its cries echo within the skull, creating a sorrowful melody. A ground-type Cubone, but isn't this a disadvantage against Mariani? The receptionist girl tilted her head in confusion. Water beats ground, though ground also beats poison. Quite confident, aren't you? Dylan raised an eyebrow when he saw Cubone. Gary clearly intended to sweep with Cub 1 and turn the battle around. But what a shame! Dylan glanced at the stern-faced Gary, his eyes filled with amusement. This young master is about to get a good taste of poison. Chapter 8, How Do I Beat This Gym? Cub 1, charge in and use boomerang. Gary's usually confident and proud expression was now filled with seriousness. This gym battle was a 2-on-2, which meant that Cub 1 was his last hope. He couldn't afford to lose here. Rhoda Gym was known as one of the weakest gyms around. He was Gary Oak, grandson of the renowned Professor Oak. How could he lose to a gym like this? No way. Absolutely not. He had to win. He had just been too careless earlier. If it weren't for the toxic, his Wartortle would never have lost. Now, he had to stay fully focused. Cub 1 let out a low growl, gripping its bone tightly as it charged toward Mariani. But it wasn't just charging straight ahead. Instead, it kept zigzagging to confuse Mariani's vision. Although Dylan thought Cubone's speed made this tactic a bit unnecessary, it showed that Gary didn't just train his Pokemon mindlessly. But unfortunately, it wasn't going to help much. This zigzagging only made it take longer for Cub 1 to reach Mariani. Mariani, use toxic spikes, Dylan ordered with a faint smile. Mariani raised its two tentacles, and deep purple poison-type energy gathered between them, forming a round sphere. Cub 1, stop it. Gary frowned slightly. Toxic spikes? Poison-type trainers were indeed rare, which meant that most people didn't really understand poison-type Pokemon's techniques and strategies. That's why, when Dylan received a Mariani from his father, he immediately decided to make poison types the signature of his early gym battles. According to the knowledge in Dylan's memory, there were only a handful of poison-type specialists in the entire Pokemon series, including games, manga, and anime. There was Koga, the Elite Four member, and later gym leader, from the first and second generations, followed by his successor Janine, Roxy from the fifth generation, Plumeria from Team Skull in the seventh generation, Clara from the eighth generation, and Atticus from Team Star in the ninth generation. And that's it. Among these poison-type specialists, the only one who could truly be considered a master was Koga, as he was an Elite Four level trainer. The others were just minor players. Unless you count Agatha from the Elite Four, who was officially a ghost-type specialist, but she had considerable knowledge of poison types as well. So, it made sense that the general public knew very little about poison types. Since poison wasn't a mainstream type, few people took the time to learn about it in depth. As for toxic spikes, Gary had only seen it mentioned in move reference books. He vaguely remembered it being a move that controlled the battlefield by affecting the environment. But regardless, stopping the opponent from using a move was always the right choice. Too late, Dylan chuckled softly. Just as Cub 1 reached Mariani, Mariani lifted its tentacles and launched the purple sphere into the air. The poison-type move, Toxic Spikes. Boom! The sphere exploded like a firework, scattering a suspicious-looking purple fluid all over the battlefield. As the toxic spikes settled into the battlefield, the ground seemed to emit an eerie purple glow for a moment before returning to normal, as if nothing had happened. But was it really nothing? Gary knew it couldn't be that simple. A sense of foreboding rose in his heart, but there was nothing he could do about it now. The good news was that Cub 1 finally reached Mariani. Cub 1. Cub 1 let out a low growl, swinging its bone at Mariani, striking it directly on the head. The ground-type move, Boomerang. Mariani let out a sharp cry of pain as the ground-type move dealt significant damage. 1 hit, 2 hits, 3 hits. Cub 1 swung its bone 3 times in quick succession, knocking Mariani to the ground and leaving it severely weakened. Seeing this, the cheerleaders in the audience screamed in excitement, cheering loudly for Gary. Don't let it get away. Use Stomp. Gary's expression lit up with joy, and he immediately had Cub 1 go in for the chase. Cub 1 let out another low growl and stepped toward Mariani, but just as it took that step, a chilling, eerie purple light suddenly enveloped Cubone's entire body, and the intense pain from the poison caused Cub 1 to double over in agony. The first wave of toxic spikes had activated. What? Gary's eyes widened. Mariani, use pin missile, Dylan ordered calmly, unsurprised. Mariani struggled to lift itself up, its tentacles glowing with white energy as it fired a barrage of pin missiles. Boom, boom, boom. The pin missiles struck the helpless, poisoned Cub 1, and explosions echoed through the battlefield. Cub 1. Gary's expression changed, realizing he was in trouble. The explosions from the pin missiles kicked up a thick cloud of dust, obscuring Cub 1 from view. But Dylan wasn't concerned. Cub 1 had high physical defense, and pin missile wasn't a move that countered Cub 1, so the damage was limited. Still, no need to rush. They could take their time. Mariani, use recover. Mariani stood up, its body glowing with a bright white light once again. With recover, the injuries from bone meringue quickly faded from Mariani's body. In no time, Mariani had regained its normal condition. Gary watched in frustration as Mariani recovered, his face darkening. As the dust settled, Cubone's figure reappeared. Despite the damage from the toxic spikes and pin missile, Cubone's stamina was still decent. Cub 1, are you okay? But Gary was still worried, as the way Cub 1 had reacted to the toxic spikes looked too much like it had been poisoned. But now, it didn't seem to be poisoned? Cub 1 responded with a low growl, indicating it wasn't seriously hurt. Good. This time, we'll finish it off in one go. Gary was relieved. As long as Cub 1 wasn't poisoned, they still had a chance to win. Cub 1. Use bone meringue. Cub 1 gripped its bone tightly, charging toward Mariani with renewed determination. Mariani tilted its head slightly, standing still as it watched Cub 1 approach. What's this? It's not even trying to dodge? Gary hesitated. Mr. Gary, don't you understand toxic spikes? Dylan couldn't help but speak up, his tone gentle. Question mark. Toxic spikes doesn't just activate once, it keeps triggering unless you remove it. Dylan explained to Gary. Gary's eyes widened in shock. And just then, as Cubone's right foot hit the ground near Mariani, that familiar, eerie purple light once again enveloped its entire body, and the intense pain from the toxic spike struck again. Cub 1 froze in its tracks, letting out a pained cry. With Cub 1 paralyzed by the toxic spikes, it was left defenseless right in front of Mariani. Are you kidding me? Gary's mind was buzzing, his composure finally cracking. How am I supposed to beat this gym? Chapter 9, leave a good review for the gym. Cub 1 is unable to battle. Mariani is the winner. Since both of the challengers' Pokemon are unable to battle, the victor of this match is gym leader Dylan. The referee announced the battle's result. Yay, gym leader is the best. The receptionist was overjoyed, bouncing up and down with excitement. The gym leader had won. Yes, after a prolonged struggle, Cub 1 had finally succumbed to its injuries. The battlefield had been covered with toxic spikes, and Cub 1 had no way to counter them. It couldn't use rapid spin to clear the spikes, nor could it fly to avoid them. Cubone's defeat was inevitable. As for the cheerleaders, they all looked deflated now. Gary's face had turned pale, and his eyes were dazed. He was Gary Oak, the grandson of the famous Professor Oak, and he had lost. Moreover, he had been decisively defeated, losing 2 Pokemon to 1. This gym. Gary raised his head slightly to look at Dylan across the battlefield, starting to doubt his own abilities. This didn't make sense. The league's official website described the Rota gym as weak. Could it be that the problem was with him, not the gym? Gary fell into deep thought. Was he really that bad? It was a great battle. You performed well. Dylan walked over to Mariani, crouching down slightly to pat its head. Mariani shyly lowered its head. This child was still so bashful. Seeing this, Dylan smiled. Despite it being their first official battle, Mariani had performed excellently. Usually quiet and shy, Mariani followed commands well during battles without hesitation. Impressive. Mr. Gary, it's unfortunate you didn't win. Dylan stood up and walked towards Gary. Gary snapped out of his daze, unable to respond. I wasn't well prepared this time. I didn't perform at my best. But his silence was short-lived. The proud Gary Oak wouldn't admit defeat easily, even if he had lost. Is that so? As the grandson of the renowned Professor Oak, I'm sure you have more potential than this. Dylan responded with a smile, as if he suddenly understood. Gary's face darkened. Darn it. But then he noticed something else. You know me? I have great respect for Professor Oak. Unfortunately, due to my responsibilities at this gym, I haven't had the chance to visit him. Dylan said regretfully. It wasn't entirely false. In his previous life, he had grown up watching Pokemon and had always admired Professor Oak from Pallet Town. However, he had only been in this world for a week, not enough time to visit. Gary understood. Many people admired his grandfather. After all, Professor Oak had created the Pokédex. I was careless this time. I'll prepare better and challenge you again. Since Dylan had said so, Gary adjusted his attitude and spoke seriously. He had to admit that he had lost this time. But Gary believed that with better preparation, he could win the badge next time. Oh. Mr. Gary is very confident. I look forward to your next challenge. Dylan raised an eyebrow, smiling at Gary. Next time, I'll beat you. That Mariani is nothing. Gary huffed, regaining his arrogant stance. Poison type? Mariani, huh? Ha! When he leaves, he'll catch a Magnemite, train it to a Magneton, and destroy Mariani. Steel type is immune to poison, and electric type beats water. Easy win. Mariani, walking beside Dylan, raised its head slightly. It had heard Gary's words, and it seemed like he was underestimating it. Mariani seriously considered if it should use its tentacles to poke Gary and see how quickly he would collapse. But it decided against it. Not out of fear, but because it didn't want to cause trouble for its trainer. Then I'll be waiting. Dylan chuckled, finding Gary's arrogance amusing. Just wait. Take care. Goodbye. Gary, still confident, bid farewell to Dylan and waved to his cheerleaders in the audience. Let's go, girls. The cheerleading squad quickly gathered around him. Mr. Gary, wait. As if remembering something, Dylan called out to Gary. Question mark. Gary turned back. Remember to leave a good review for Rhoda Gym. Dylan said with a smile. This was important. The reviews for Rhoda Gym on the league's website were currently quite terrible. Gary's mouth twitched. Although the battle had ended, and he had a decent chat with Dylan, his experience with this gym challenge wasn't exactly pleasant. Okay. But Gary was fair. He had lost to Dylan, and he recognized Dylan's skills. Better than the previous 3 gym leaders he had faced. Leaving Rhoda Gym, Gary glanced back at its luxurious exterior, lost in thought. Dylan's use of toxic spikes had been torturous for him. But on reflection, unless his Pokemon were poison or steel type, dealing with toxic spikes would be tough. Maybe this strategy had potential? What's wrong, Mr. Gary? Mariani is an Alolan Pokemon. I can't just go to Alola to catch one, can I? And what about the rest of the team? Gary mumbled, now intrigued by the toxic spike strategy. He remembered other Pokemon could use it too. But he lacked a complete strategy, and without defeating Mariani, he hadn't seen Dylan's other Pokemon. The cheerleaders looked at each other, puzzled. Beep beep. Gary's phone rang. He answered quickly. Hey Blue. Gary gestured for the cheerleaders to be quiet and greeted the caller. Gary, how's your gym challenge going? A lazy-sounding voice came from the other end. I've got 3 badges already. Now challenging the Rhoda Gym. Gary replied, his tone respectful, unlike his usual arrogance. Rhoda Gym? The voice on the other end sounded confused, not remembering this gym. Yeah, it's in a town near Pewter City. This gym is something else. Gary hesitated at the end. Oh. I'll have to check it out sometime. By the way, I heard you took the family sports car on your journey? Blue's tone was playful, almost teasing. Gary broke into a sweat. He wasn't afraid of his grandfather, Professor Oak, but his older brother, Blue, was a different story. Growing up, Blue had always outshone him in every aspect. Even their personalities were different. While others saw Gary as arrogant, he knew that compared to Blue, his pride was nothing. Most importantly, Blue had incredible talent. Gary knew he was a genius trainer, but his brother Blue was a monster. Even Professor Oak acknowledged Blue's talent, believing he would surpass him. Well, Gary was at a loss for words, his grandfather's betrayal stinging. Return the car by tomorrow. If your performance in the Indigo League isn't better than Ash's, well, Gary, you know what to expect. Blue said casually. Oh. Gary felt wronged. Why did he have to compare his results with Ash? How could he lose to Ash? Ridiculous. Chapter 10, Your system has arrived. Gym leader, you're amazing. Inside the gym, the receptionist excitedly ran up to Dylan, her eyes sparkling with admiration. That challenger just now seemed so arrogant, and his followers too. They were shouting before the battle was even over. How rude. But when you won, their faces turned pale. Ha ha. The receptionist laughed gleefully, clearly delighted by the turn of events. Those cheerleaders had really annoyed her. Every time the challenger gained even a slight advantage, they wouldn't stop shouting. It was so rude and ridiculous. Thankfully, the gym leader was strong and won in the end. Dylan seemed a bit lost in thought, but he smiled warmly at the receptionist, clearly sensing her bright and happy mood. Her ponytail swayed energetically. I'm going to treat Mariani now. If there are any more challengers, let me know. Dylan gently rubbed the girl's head with a smile. Although Mariani's injuries weren't severe thanks to its recover move, it was still a bit tired. In the real world, Pokemon using moves also consumed physical and mental energy. For instance, if you had a novice Charmander continuously use Ember, it would probably get exhausted after a dozen times, even without battling. Okay, the receptionist replied energetically. After Dylan left, the receptionist went back to the front desk and took out a notebook. March 27th, sunny. After a week, the gym finally had a challenger again. The handsome gym leader defeated the arrogant challenger with just a Mariani. The gym leader is amazing. This is also the gym leader's first victory as the gym leader. The gym leader will definitely get stronger and the gym will improve. In the backyard, Dylan sprayed some high-quality potion on Mariani and let it rest for a while. Dylan sat on a picnic mat with a strange expression, staring at the virtual screen in front of him. Yes, a virtual screen. System? At your service, host. Dylan was speechless. He had a system? In his previous life, stories about transmigrators were very popular, and 99% of transmigrators had something called a system, which was essentially a cheat code. Dylan had been transmigrated for a week and had seen no sign of any system, but just after defeating Gary, the system suddenly appeared. A screen had popped up with text on it, and Dylan almost thought he was hallucinating. According to the system's prompt, congratulations, host, on defeating your first opponent in an official battle. The ultimate trainer system is at your service. To Dylan, this felt more like, your system has arrived, please check. So, system, what can you do? Dylan, having calmed his emotions, curiously asked the system. The ultimate trainer development system can help you become the world's strongest trainer. Can you explain your functions in detail? Dylan asked politely. The growth simulation is currently unlocked and can help you become stronger in the shortest time possible. Please be more specific. Dylan raised an eyebrow. Level up by fighting. The system replied succinctly. Dylan was puzzled. What did that mean? After detailed communication with the system, Dylan finally understood what this so-called growth simulation's level up by fighting meant. This system is pretty strong. Dylan was amazed. He felt like he was about to truly take off. In the real world, how do you get stronger? The real world isn't like a game with levels and experience points. So, of course, you train your Pokemon to the utmost, through special training to improve their abilities. Besides that, you engage in various battles. Battles enrich Pokemon's combat experience, helping them adapt to the battle rhythm and develop rapport. Through the baptism of battle, Pokemon also become stronger. From what Dylan knew, there wasn't a very clear strength level division in this world. Strength could be determined by a battle. After all, official battles were risk-free. According to the generally accepted strength levels, they were Novice, Ordinary, Ace, Elite, and Champion. Champion-level trainers were considered the strongest by the general public. As for gym leaders, it was a position, not a strength level, since the gym leader community was diverse, with varying levels of strength. Weak ones, like the current temporary leaders of Cerulean Gym, could be bullied by novice trainers. Strong ones, like Hammerlock Gym leader Storm of Dragons Raihan from the Galar region, were champion-level trainers. It was said that if Raihan went to another region, he could even become a regional champion. Then there's Mustard, the former champion of the Galar region and the fighting dojo leader. If he went all out, Mustard's strength might surpass Raihan's by far. Dylan's current strength was at most an ordinary-level trainer. After all, he had only been in this world for a week, but Dylan believed his talent as a trainer was exceptional. A week ago, he would have been considered a novice trainer. Even without the system, Dylan was confident he could become an excellent and powerful trainer. Now that the system has appeared, Dylan was even more confident he could outshine all his contemporaries. I'll test it out tonight. Dylan glanced at the sky. There was still some time before nightfall, and the growth mode could only be used at night. Beep beep. Suddenly, Dylan's phone rang. He glanced at it. It was a message from his dad. The items he had requested had arrived. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated as a Kanto gym leader. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Quick reminder. Part 17 will be the final installment of the What If Overpowered Ichigo Left Karakura Town series, at least for now. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.